Guys around the globe and the great beyond, welcome back to another installment of the Guy Stuff podcast. I am your host, Anthony Claiborne, joined today, as always, by my good friend from the other side of the planet, my brother from another mother, John the Red Man SB. And we've got a special guest hanging out with us today. He's going to help you figure out how to get your Benjamins right. We are
all about them Benjamins, baby. All about
them, or your Washingtons, whatever you may have, or your Jeffersons.
Mostly that.
Whatever the case may be. But we are joined by Scott Braddock of Braddock Financial. Scott is a financial planner here in the Triangle of North Carolina, where I live, around Raleigh. And Scott actually, like myself and John, is an LU grad, and he's
LU baby.
LU. He is a father and husband, and he rolls one of the most polite people I've ever met. Just super helpful on the mat and off, and he's going to tell us today how to get our money straight. How's it going, Scott?
It's going good. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you with us live from the dining room, looks like, maybe, right?
That's right. That's right. The mirror is the most manliest thing I could find, you know. And,
well, the table's wood. The table looks like it's wood.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's like some etch wood or something there. Look at that, some etching going on there. That's nice.
Powerful.
Yeah.
I need to come up with a good story of how I found this on the beach and whittled it into a table.
Yeah. There you go, man. Be like the scene out of Karate Kid 2 where the guy's on the beach and like trying to chop the big board in half. The big one he found. That's what you gotta be like. I found it and cut it in half with my hand. That's what you gotta be like doing that
one. Good stuff.
That's right.
Well,
ahead,
well, Scott, I was telling Anthony before we kind of talked a little bit. It's like this is gonna be Anthony, his whole interview, because I got like $3 to my name, so there ain't much financial planning I can do with $3. But hopefully you can help me out, because maybe there's some people out there like me who is definitely living paycheck to paycheck and just praying God bring some stuff in. So maybe you can help us all out and help us figure out how to make $1 out of 15 cents. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. Well, hey man, starting with prayer is the right thing to do, and as long as you're only spending $2.75 of that $3, you're doing okay. You know? I like to quote Tennessee Williams. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or not, but he has a quote that says that if your outflow exceeds your inflow, then your upkeep will be your downfall. So that's a good place to start.
There it is. End of the interview is all we got to do.
Yep,
right there.
We're done.
That's it.
Mic drop.
Thanks for the interview.
We'll see you guys.
So our guys can get to know you a little bit better, man. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up. What was life like for Scott growing up? You know, mom, dad, brothers, sisters. Where you grew up, just kind of what was all that like?
Yeah. So I grew up in a very small town in Rising Sun, Maryland. This is right on the border of Pennsylvania and Delaware. Not too far from Amish country. The town that I grew up in was a dairy town. Not a whole lot to do. I played a lot of baseball growing up. It's a Cal Ripken town. Matter of fact, Cal Ripken Sr. lived in my town, and my mother sold Mary Kay to his wife.
Wow. I love that.
So we had some. There you go. Me too, man.
So we'll have to forgive you, though. I mean, like, this is mostly a Southern, led podcast, and so we'll forgive you for coming down and being on a Yankee coming down. Well, at least you wised up and left the North, and so we forgive you for that, brother.
Well, John, I appreciate that, John. I'd love to get further down here in the South, but keep this in mind. Now, look, I grew up reenacting the Civil War. Remember, I said there wasn't a whole lot to do, and so here's what I know. What I know is that Maryland is south of the Mason-Dixon, my friend.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I will add to that is
no. You can take your history and just shove it somewhere else, because there ain't nothing Southern about Maryland.
Well,
like North Virginia, you get North Virginia up, you can just take it like just even people in Virginia will get mad at me because they're like, we the South. I lived in Virginia. I was like, y'all ain't the South. They're like, oh, we're the South. Like, no, man, come to Mississippi and I will show you the South.
True story, and you guys can fact check this. Prior to the American Civil War, Maryland was sympathetic to the South, and you actually had
Preaching, brother.
newspaper editors spoke and wrote on behalf of the South when the South attacked Fort Sumter. That's when Maryland flipped the switch and was like, we can't support that. So, and we could have a whole nother discussion about that. But
oh, for sure.
Are you familiar with Kent Island in Maryland? Kent Island?
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
That's Chesapeake Bay. That used to be my family's
Chesapeake
island.
Bay now. Oh,
It used to
okay.
be my family's island. Then the king took it and gave it to Calvert. So I have my own reasons to not like Maryland.
Gotcha. Well, I'm happy to be in Raleigh. What can I say?
There you go. See, you at least in the South, that's good, man. We happily will bring people down who wise up and come down. So we appreciate you.
That's right.
Coming on down, man.
Well, thank you for that.
How long have you lived down here? I know it's been a while.
So I met my wife at Liberty, and she's born and raised in Raleigh. She has a really large family right here, and I have a very small family. So growing up, I have sisters who are twins. They're 13 months older than me. They went to Liberty as well, married two gentlemen that graduated from Liberty also. Very, very small family. There were some cousins, but, just really a small family. So I really like the dynamics of my wife's family, large. And, I had those two twin sisters, no brothers. So she has two brothers of her own plus 5 guy cousins. So, I said, hey, this could be a good deal. And but I have fallen in love with Raleigh in general and North Carolina as a whole. I mean, there's just so much to do right here. It's really great. So I've been here now for about 20 years. Ashley and I will be married 18 years. I came down and tested the waters a little bit before we tied the knot, and good choices. Her and I are married for 7 years before we had children. And so we looked at Charleston. We looked hard at Charlotte, and, just couldn't beat Raleigh. So here we are.
Raleigh was like a nice. I was looking at Southeastern University or Southeastern Seminary, going there for a while, and went and checked out Raleigh and Wake Forest area. I love that area, man. It's just a beautiful, awesome. You have seasons, man. Like that's one thing I miss about being in Thailand is I don't have seasons. It's just hot and less hot, and rainy and less and hot. That's just
rainy and less rainy.
Raleigh is a great place, man.
Yeah, there you go.
Pretty much it.
We are partial. I know my friends listening to this all over the country, and there's some cool places around the country, but I am partial to North Kakalaki. I mean, I've been a lot of places, and every time that airplane's banking back into RDU and I can see the green, it makes me feel warm inside. I mean, we've got pretty much everything you want. We got the coast. We got cities that are just big enough if you like to get a little bit of culture. We got the best barbecue on the planet. We got mountains. Mississippi don't even got barbecue, man. What are you talking about?
Man, you talking about we got like the best barbecue. Man, you go down to Mississippi and you will find some big 400-pound dude just sweating all up in some red barbecue sauce, and that's what makes it good. And it's like y'all got that stupid vinegar, that y'all's vinegar-based barbecue, like that's what kills all the flavor off from the sweat, man. I'm just saying.
We are the originals, I believe. I mean, historically.
I'll tell you, you guys are making me hungry.
I know, right? I know what's for lunch today. A lot of times I do this podcast, Scott, with Sam Jones barbecue hat on, a little flat bill from Sam Jones down.
Oh, is that right?
In Pitt County, it is now.
Okay. Yeah, I got to tell you, when I first moved down here, barbecue was kind of new. Sweet tea, barbecue, and even biscuits. For whatever reason in Maryland, when biscuits just weren't. You just didn't crave a biscuit. When I moved down here,
my point.
Y'all eat scones up there.
I'm just telling you.
Proving my point.
Unless you had, hold on, John. Wait a second. Unless you had some gravy. Because now biscuits and gravy was a staple in my house. But that's the only way you could eat a biscuit. I never put egg on it. Never did any of that kind of crazy stuff till I got down here. So one of the things that I did, and I used to do some traveling in this industry. I used to go meet with people in their homes, and so I was on a mission when I first moved here to try every single barbecue place I could possibly find. And I'm telling you, I put on some pounds that reflected what I was doing to myself. But I'm telling you, I'm okay with putting some vinegar in the barbecue, put it in the small. All that's good. But my favorite place of all time is out in Kinston. It's called King's Barbecue. It's a buffet, and they put the hog out there. You can pick it right from the pig, and man,
It's my hometown.
That sounds good.
Is that right?
That sounds
there
good.
You go.
K-Town, baby. Matter of fact, not to self-promote, but I actually have a novel I just released that is set in 1939 Kinston, and the 1969 novel coming behind it is and 99 both is gonna have King's Barbecue in it.
There you go. Well, I'm gonna get me some a case of cheer wine, and
yes,
take
that's
a
what
read.
I'm talking about.
Have a read. I'll read that.
That is what I'm talking about, man. Well, Scott, financial planning. Like you said, you grew up playing baseball, and kids, young men, we grow up like wanting to be all kinds of things, right? Like I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a soldier. I want to, do this. How did you arrive at financial planning? Because I get a feeling probably as a like 4th, 5th grade Scott, you weren't like walking around with your own suit on and briefcase. Like, I want to be a financial, I'm going to be a financial planner. How did you arrive at that?
I don't know how you gleaned that, Anthony, but you're exactly right. That wasn't me.
Just a hunch.
Just, and looking back and when I talk to my mom, and she sees where I'm at, and there's certain things that she'll remind me of that I did as a child that makes sense now looking at what I do. One of those stories is she says I used to rent my cars out to my neighbors to play with them with me.
That's fantastic.
So I don't necessarily remember that, but you're right. I kind of stumbled into.
It's like I can neither confirm nor deny that happened.
Yeah, exactly. But I was if I'm being fair, I was probably groomed for the military. Not a whole lot to do in my town unless you wanted to be a farmer or get into construction, and being caught between two different cities, being Philadelphia and Baltimore. You heard about a lot of bad things, a lot of not so good things about cities, and unfortunately things that go on in cities kind of find their ways into those towns that are caught in between them. So just it wasn't a bright future there for me, and I knew that at a young age. So I did join the Air Force. I signed up for the Air Force. I was assigned a job, but man, I grew up working on the farms, taking care of horses, baling hay. And so I was always working, and the thing with the Air Force is they make you wait 6 months before you can go. And I was doing a landscaping job, and one of the yahoos, and I had a worse name for him, but hey, I'll keep it clean. Let's just say he wasn't of sound mind at any point in time ever while he was working, and he managed to let go of one of these big hydro walk-behind lawnmowers. And if you don't know what those are, you squeeze the handle and they go. And so he did just that and pinned my ankle against the trailer bed of this, pull behind this truck, and I fell off. My ankle stayed there, broke it in half. So I look back now and I think it was a God thing. I ended up at Liberty. I met my wife, and I believe his plan worked out there in the long run. So I kind of stumbled into that, and then long story short, there her father was in the insurance industry, and was kind of talking to me a little bit about what was going on there, and one thing led to another, and I started talking to a friend of mine that was in estate planning. And learned the ins and outs of what he was doing, and found that there was a place for financial education, financial support, and started to get more involved in that, and found that there was definitely a need there, in a way that I could serve, in a way that I could focus on more than just making money for my family, something that I felt I was getting some satisfaction. I was actually helping. There was some reward.
Well, I think that one of the things that is the biggest thing that you said in there that prepared you for hard work is baling hay. I think that more young people today need to go bale hay for a summer, and they will learn the benefit of working hard. Until you've had to run to catch up on a the haystack, slinging it up to the guy stacking it. You ain't worked. I'm saying you ain't worked.
Sounds like the voice of experience.
My papa would start. He'd turn on he'd get the tractor or the truck, pull the hay the hay trailer on the back of it, and the grandkids would be out. And he didn't stop. You fell off, you got back up and ran back up on the trailer and got on it. You had to run. He didn't stop, man. So it was, and you made like $2 baling hay all day. So it was not fun.
Well, work in general, I think is, like probably all three of us are probably the last generation for now that across the board grew up working. You worked hay, you worked baling hay, I worked in tobacco, I worked on the loading docks at my uncle's textile mill. We loaded 500 rolls of fabric a day. I remember the roof of the trailer would get so hot, you would bump it with your back, because what we did is we built a wall and you built a step. You kept doing it, and you'd have to climb up in there, and you'd literally burn your back sometimes on the roof of the trailer because it was so hot. And I think that as we're talking about finances, and I'm going to use this kind of as a segue, Scott, a lot of, I think, what we see kind of two struggles I think dudes have sometimes. Sometimes those of us who like worked our butts off, we get older and we're like, I have worked my tail off. I'm going to have some fun, dag nabbit. And I'm going to buy myself some toys that I wanted when I was a kid. And I'm going to do it. And that's just all there is to it. But then you also have that other side where it's like, people just, all they do is work, and they don't have that balance. So, and I love what you said, the fact that your what you do, your job is to help people. And I think that's so important. A lot of times, guys who are listening, let's be honest, we do not want to talk to the doctor. We don't want to go to the doctor and get our yearly physical for many reasons, turn your head and cough. And we do not want to talk to anybody about our finances because we're very guarded. And the reality is there are people God puts in place to help us. So if I can, using that little segue, Scott, what do you find as you sit down with couples is the biggest challenge? I mean, you deal with helping people plan for retirement and all that, but what is the biggest common across the board thread that you feel like is a challenge that families face financially?
Yeah, that's a great question, and my primary focus is helping folks that are pre-retirement or well into retirement. However, I do work with a lot of my clients' children, and that could be close to my age and sometimes younger. What I like to do is sit down with folks and really first just talk about their different goals and concerns. You mentioned common thread. There's some commonalities between people, and really what I see is that folks want to, the folks that are saving. Unfortunately, we have an epidemic today of folks not saving, and it probably ties in, Anthony, to how we worked growing up and have an appreciation and a value and understanding of where things come from. But unfortunately today we have folks that just don't realize that they're going to have to save for their own retirement. Pensions have faded away. So you don't have those companies like my grandfather had that say, hey, you work for me for 30 years. I'm going to take care of you for 30 years. Today, you have to save for your own retirement. You have to invest for your own retirement. Then you have to find a way to turn that all into an income stream that you're not going to outlive. So it's a lot more challenging. But what I see is that for the folks that do a good job during the accumulation phase, and what I mean by that is they're actually saving, they're actually putting money away, they're taking advantage of the match on their 401k. They have investments outside of their 401k, which is very important to do. That's great. And so folks will come in and they'll say, Scott, look, this is what we saved, this is what we've acquired. And I can, for those folks, I can look and say, great, congratulations. This is wonderful that you have been good stewards and you've done this for yourselves and for your future. And it can be hard for younger folks because retirement isn't as tangible. It's so far away, and a lot of folks believe it'll never come. Well, working with retirees, I have known at a very young age that one day I'm going to be there myself. So, I think what most folks fail to do is put together a good written game plan. So that's the common thread that I see that folks are lacking is a written plan that shows exactly what their concerns are, what their goals are, and that's going to reflect what they're saving for. I'm telling you, there's nothing more empowering. Yeah, go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say, that's just going from my own experience. My retirement goal or my retirement idea is I'm going to just work till I'm dead. Just going to work until I fall over dead, and that's it. Or I go to the verse.
That is a plan, but
that is a plan. But I don't know if it's a great plan, but it's a plan.
Not necessarily the best plan.
And I lean on I try to lean on like scripture and going, I've seen the righteous. I said David was in one of the Psalms saying, I've been young, now I'm old, but I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor their children begging for food. So I'm like, okay, God, like you're gonna have to do this. If you want me to survive past 60. So anyway, so
go ahead, John.
No, I was gonna say the question is, for me, like, I'm not good at writing a plan out. I'm not good at laying things out. How would you approach somebody, or where would somebody start from that says, look, I don't have an extra income coming in. I don't have a lot to put into savings. What would be like the first step if you were going to say you're talking to me? What would be the first step to say, okay, this is what we need to do? And especially since I'm 40 and I don't have any kind of retirement, and I'm in my own ministry, so I don't have a way of
ain't nobody matching Jack. Yeah, that's
yeah.
Right through it. This is right to the heart of the matter. I actually wrote it down over here. I was like, self-employed people. Like I wrote it down with a question mark. Self-employed people, like ain't no the cavalry ain't coming. Ain't nobody matching.
That's right.
That's right.
So how would you address that? Somebody that's a little older, that's not over the hill yet, but we climbing it, and but hasn't had a chance to save, hasn't done that, or hadn't had the chance, or hasn't taken the initiative to do that.
Get a handgun, get some little burlap sacks.
Kidding.
We do not advocate that. Okay,
I'm just saying, don't go around nobody. But like, how would you answer that? How would you connect to that, or
Yeah. I mean, that was great because kind of some of what Anthony said and you said as well, John, kind of painted a bigger picture here that I can share with you. Anthony mentioned earlier that sometimes folks really want to guard their finances, and it's hard to get them to sit down because they have a different outlook, and some guys, they have this idea, I'm going to work forever, and I'm kind of like that. Retirement's sort of overrated to me. Not just with what I do, but I always want to be doing something, right? But we have to plan. Just like we pray for certain things, and we sort of talk to God about certain plans that we have for ourselves, and then of course He intervenes and can take us different courses, and life happens. No matter what financial plan that you have, always call them a 90% plan because there's that 10% element that's just life. And so we can have a plan to work forever, but what if you get sick? And you've got a wife and you've got kids. So the important part of your question is how do we get started? And for me, when I sit down with folks like you, John, and it's really about trying to find out emotionally, what's going to get you motivated to, number one, to create a plan. What's going to keep you motivated to keep that plan. And so again, it really is about your goals and your concerns. And Anthony mentioned toys. Absolutely, yes, guys, we want to have our toys, and but there's a smart way to acquire those toys as well. And so maybe you have a goal to buy 8 guitars, or, you have a goal to, buy a certain, whatever, piece of equipment, or, I'm looking at some new golf clubs, since I can't roll right now. That's one thing that we can do. But I'm thinking, what, I probably need to do this, and this before I can fit that into what's going on in my bigger financial picture. So once we identify goals and concerns, then we can start looking at more of the accounting side, the boring side, the numbers, right? Mm-hmm. Look at what your income is. Look at what your fixed assets are, right? And really get just do that simple accounting right there to see what extra there is. And if there's not extra, then we've got a cash burn issue, and we need to regroup, and maybe we need to cut back on some things that we thought were fixed assets or fixed expenses, but really aren't. They're just wants. And so that's the first thing is really define what's a want and what's a need. And once you can clearly define that, then you can see what money you have to work with. And you guys know this from, being jiu-jitsu practitioners. Sometimes it's a game of inches. And so even if you're only putting $20 away a month, over time, just that habit of doing that is going to build momentum over time. Because number one, you'll start to see that you're having some cash build up. And number two, you're paying more attention to how you're spending money. So you're going to start spending money less on things that aren't important to you. They're not as important to you as those goals and those concerns. And again, it can be money, putting money aside to make purchases. on things that you want, or could be putting money aside to build the protection that you want, to, invest in things that are going to protect you financially as well.
And that's something that I was kind of, you brought up, is like when we're saving and doing those inches and get a little bit of a money saved up, for somebody that's looking like, okay, how do I have a padding for retirement? How do I, what do I do to invest that? Or what's the best way to invest that? Is it a 401k? Is it an IRA? Like, what's the best next step? Say you have, say you save up for 2 years, 3 years, whatever, you have $2,000, or you get a stimulus check and you got like $2,400 sitting there. What would be the best way to reinvest that to actually make that even count? Because, $2,000 in the long run of retirement is nothing, really. And so, like, how do you actually make that money work for you?
Right. And, unfortunately, there's no one size fits all, and there's no simple answer to that question. It's just a matter of going through a process that's going to kind of reveal the best plan for you. What I mean by that is folks have different financial personalities. So one person that has $2,000, they may look at the stock market and say, hey, I know these companies, I've been following them. I know that I can invest this. Right now is a down market, currently, and to some extent. So a good time to buy and look at some of these companies. Fire sale. There you go, man. Speaking my language. So now's a great time to be buying and so investing that $2,000, into the stock market right now could be an excellent idea. However, there are some folks that when they think of the stock market, especially now, because to them it creates fear that there's so much uncertainty, there's so much volatility, and the worst thing they could do is put $2,000 in the stock market because they're not going to sleep at night. They're going to be too worried and too concerned. Now, I can give advice there based on age, whether or not they should be concerned or not. If you're in the accumulation phase of life, you should just be focusing on putting money away. Fire sale right now, but you constantly want to be investing, so you're taking advantage of dollar cost averaging. So if you're 10 years out from retirement, that's where you should have horse blinds on, and maybe not even looking at your 401ks or your other savings plans if you're self-employed. And then, of course, as you get closer to that distribution phase where you're going to start needing some of that savings, you need to start paying better attention to those numbers. But the stock market, if you're working with a good advisor, can help you diversify according to your risk tolerance. I give everyone a risk score based on our investment policy statement. So I have an idea of the amount of money you want at risk, and we have diversified portfolios so that when the market does go down, not all of your money is subjected to those downturns. So you can create a plan like that for yourself. But compounded interest is a wonderful thing too. And there's ways that you can take advantage of, safely investing that money and not taking on a lot of risk. And so, like I said, there's no one size fits all. I meet with folks that have millions of dollars that have never invested in the stock market. Okay. And these are folks that found safe vehicles to put their money into and have let it grow and never had any stress or worrying about the stock market. So real quickly, I have, you can't label people like soup cans. I think George Bush said that, but it's very true. But I try to identify folks in 3 different categories. They're either savers, investors, or speculators. Speculators, by definitions, are folks that don't mind the big upturns and the big downturns of the stock market. They're probably big fans of Vegas, betting, gambling, all that, right? And then you have the investor. A strong investor really understands the market, a stock market, at least enough to where they feel they can protect their principal. And so they don't really get anxious when the market does what it does. And but then you have the savers. And these are folks that prior to 401ks and the big move to the stock market in general, looked at the stock market like they did Vegas. They only put in what they were willing to lose. There's a lot of folks out there like that. And I find that they're the most underserved. So I'm on a mission to help those folks worry less about their money, helping savers worry less about their money, because, these are folks that want to know that they can meet their goals and address their concerns without listening to the Wall Street message where they just have to keep dumping their money and gambling on, a certain outcome.
Well, guys in general, man, we tend to be like really all or nothing. And I think that's one of our struggles as men we face. We tend to, we're like all in. If I can't save like a lot, man, I'm just forget it. I'm just not going to do it. And I feel like it's real important for guys to get past that and get over that hump. And I'll say, John, what you said is absolutely true about what God tells us in Scripture, but He also reveals a lot to us in Proverbs about leaving a legacy for our children and our children's children. and Jesus even said and talked about, the importance of, if you get ready to build a tower, sitting down and counting the costs to make sure that you have enough money to build that tower. And for me personally, I'm on the other side of the financial services spectrum. I work in the insurance world, and for me personally, I tend to think about not just my children, but my grandchildren now. I've got some gray in my beard, and I'm, my kids are, one child is 21 and the other one's 17 going on 40. And so I'm thinking more, realistically, like in 5 years, I could realistically be a granddad, And so I tend to think more along the lines of not even my own retirement as much as what can I do to set up the kids and the grandkids. Could you speak to that a moment, Scott? What are some things that we as men can do to leave a legacy? And it's not just about leaving a bunch of money. It's not. It's about, in reality, a lot of times the money equals freedom. It equals the freedom to do things like ministry and things like that might not exist if you are working 80 hours a week for somebody who's barely paying you. What can we do to leave a legacy financially to our kids and grandkids and even beyond?
Sure. And that is a goal that I identify for a lot of folks. A lot of folks, it is important to them to leave a legacy. They have charitable aspirations, or they have children they want to make sure are taken care of. And so that needs to be built into the plan for sure. And of course, there's other folks that, hey, my kids are doing really well. My wife and I, we want to, spend it down to the last penny. It's not really a concern, but
yeah.
Even with those folks, they want to make sure that their affairs are in order. And so that anything that is left is a clean transfer over to the next generation. So, even there, at least that they're not passing on a lot. I'm a big advocate for proper estate planning. I've worked with lots of attorneys over the years. I've done a lot of estate settlements and estate fundings. And so having a good estate plan would be a great idea. And most of my clients actually have one, because I really do encourage them to do that. So whether it's a will or some type of trust, I sort of like trust because they'll avoid probate, and that keeps the state out of your business. Everything's private. I like, exactly. And so then, your loved ones aren't having to deal with strangers when you pass. And so the trust really keeps things simple. Costs a little bit more, but the delta there isn't, really doesn't,
it's worth it in the long run.
It really is worth it in the long run.
So question was like on that, the trust and the state and those kind of setting those things up, like, as somebody who has parents that are getting a little older and those kind of things. And my dad passed probably almost 20 years ago, and had nothing to give, and no assets, nothing to really pass on, except some debt. Like, what would be your advice to people who may not have anything to leave, or their parents may get old and they really don't have much to really leave? Should they do an estate? Should they do a trust, or should they just leave it and be like, that's
too late,
it's going to go when they die?
Right.
Yes.
Sorry. I love you, but I gotta go.
Here's the baton.
What would be your advice for that?
You carry it on from here. Well, it's hard to give general advice like that, but here's what I can tell you. If you don't do a will at all, then what happens is when you pass in what's called intestate, and really you've left no wishes for what where your house should go. So even if you just have a house to pass on to your children, you want to have a will that points to the direction of where things should go and whom they should go to. Now every state's different, and so there's different laws and regulations that we need to be aware of. But just to have a simple will really doesn't cost a whole lot, and can really point everything in the right direction and simplify things. So not every estate, I have everyone sit down with an attorney and have a consultation there to find out what is the best estate planning tool for them. Sometimes a simple will is enough, and I love you will. What's mine is yours when I pass, and that's enough. But then other estate plans need something something a little bit better, like a trust. Maybe they have property in other states and they don't want probate in 2 different states. Maybe there's a blended marriage, so there's a blended family. And so there's different reasons that would constitute for a more detailed estate plan. Other legacy options, folks want to make sure that, there's a lot of pre-taxed money. You have those 401ks, and Anthony, you mentioned, well, what if we don't have an employer who's doing a match? Well, you have the option to create an IRA account where you can put money away and it's tax deferred. And that could be great. But I definitely want to make sure that folks aren't putting everything they have into their company 401k plan, because that money's tied up, until they're usually severed from that employer. So you're going to go through a lot of different market changes, a lot of different life changes, and not really be able to do a whole lot with that 401k. There's folks that used to advocate and just, pump everything into your 401k. Well, you can't find those guys anymore. So diversification is key there. And, I find that often folks want to make sure that when they pass that money on, that their family members aren't burdened and beneficiaries aren't burdened with the taxes. So they'll create, I have one client that I'm working with right now, creating what's called a second to die life policy. And they love this idea because when they pass away, when the second of them passes away, they're going to leave a lot of tax-free money that's going to go to pay off the taxes that are in their tax deferred account. So that's, just one example of a good strategy to leave a legacy there.
Well, you mentioned the 401k. I've often heard 401k referred to as a tax time bomb. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase before. For those who have 401ks, how can they avoid that tax time bomb? What's the best way to make sure that they don't get nailed with that?
Anthony, what's interesting is everybody's story behind that now is new as of January of this year, because there was a law that went into place January 1 that was called the Secure Act. That Secure Act changed the whole game when it comes to passing those types of accounts on.
Fantastic.
And Ed Slott is.
See, that's the kind of stuff you hear on the Guy Stuff podcast, right? Some of y'all out there right now, like light bulb just came on, so you're welcome.
Go ahead, Scott. Yeah. Absolutely. So Ed Slott is a well-known, renowned IRA guru. He wrote a book called "Avoiding the IRA Tax Bomb," and essentially what he discussed in there was a vehicle or a strategy rather known as the Stretch IRA. So the way that worked is that when you passed on that pre-tax money, your heirs could take a little bit out each year over their entire lifetime. So you avoided that tax bomb because they're not having to pay taxes on it right when they inherit it. They're just taking a little bit out over their lifetime and paying the taxes out that way. And so that you ended up passing on a lot more of your money that way, and were able to cut Uncle Sam out to a great extent. Well, unfortunately, come January 1 of this year, the Secures Act law has now states that any of those pre-taxed accounts that we pass on, our heirs have to take that money out within 10 years, Anthony. So now we're, estate planners and financial planners are having to kind of regroup on, all right, now what do we do? What is the strategy now that we can, help our clients to achieve the same goal here, avoid taxes for their heirs? And there's a couple ideas. The one that's really favorable right now, again, it kind of ties to our current market situation, is Roth IRA conversions. And I can talk more on those if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, man. Our guys are going to get an education.
Education, that's what I'm all about. Yeah. So the Roths are great. We need to look at those the right way. Here's how I describe them. I tell my folks that, when we move money out of the pre-taxed accounts, whether it's a 401k or an IRA, there's going to be a little pain going into the Roth because you've got to pay taxes on what goes in. Right. So we'll pay some tax on the seed, but we're not required to pay tax on the harvest. That money grows tax-free. You can take from it tax-free, and there's no required minimum distribution at 72. And with our 401ks and our IRAs, we can't touch those before 59 and a half. And at 72, we have to start taking out a required minimum distribution, because what Uncle Sam wants us to do is to spend all that money down during our life expectancy, according to their timetables, and pay all the taxes. So that's the goal with that pre-tax money. With the Roth, there's no R&D requirement. So right now, the other thing I would say is, so the market's down right now. So if you were to start converting and again, you want to talk to your tax professional or your financial professional that understands the taxes on these things to make sure that the amount that you are passing over isn't taking you to a new tax bracket. So you want to be smart there. But once you've paid the taxes on that money, and let's say you were to reinvest it in the current market, which is down right now, well, when the market goes back up, you're gonna see a pretty good uplift there. That's going to justify the taxes that you paid and put you in a nice spot. So a good time to look at those Roth IRA conversions.
John, you were going to say somebody?
Oh yeah, I was just asking what the name that was. Is that what he said at the end there? The Roth IRA conversions. So
gotcha. So as we kind of land the plane, three things that guys we like to leave people with action steps. So three things that our guys listening can do to get on the right path towards where they need to be, because there's realistically, I mean, we know that we've got people from all walks of life who they're tracking with you and they're like, yes, that's right, I totally get that. But like, speak to that person who maybe this stuff's a little bit new to them and even overwhelming. My man John, if you're not watching this on YouTube, is pointing to himself. But realistically, I mean, it's something that doesn't have to be overwhelming. It really doesn't, and it's good to have folks like Scott out there who are Christ followers who are going to help people and really, really help them. So, what are three action steps a guy who's got either 2 or 3 digits in his bank account can start today moving the right direction, moving in those inches?
Sure. Well, number one, I would say that if you're a married guy, that you need to sit down with your spouse and you guys need to be sort of open and honest with each other on your spending plans and your budget, and just make sure that you're on the same page and that you're going to work together as a team. Because what I see sometimes is the husband is 100% ready to get on the right path, but the wife's doesn't want to have anything to do with it. They're but they of course are spending money, or vice versa, and that's not to beat up the wives, because it can be easily roles switch there, and I do see that. I usually see that.
Oh, it was me when I was first married, bro. Like when Sherry and I were first married, like that. I think maybe like our 4th year of marriage or whatever. I was making bank. We had a nice house. I had my own parking space, a big office, and I'd be showing up at the house constantly with a new guitar, a new piece of equipment, and all that kind of stuff. And then it all came crashing down. And I was not prepared. And it took a good 10 years to get my rear end out of that situation and start thinking differently. So it definitely, we can be guilty of that.
Absolutely. So, if you're married, it should be a team effort. So the first thing you need to do is just be kind of honest with each other. And be honest with yourself. Identify those goals and concerns that you have. Those are going to be your triggers. Those are your motivators. You have to have them, and they need to be in writing. Write those down so that you can look at them. You can kind of focus on those. And Anthony, you mentioned earlier that when it comes to finances, and it's the number one aspect of our lives that we probably keep most guarded. And what I would try to encourage folks to do is to be open to the idea that maybe you need a good coach in that aspect of your life. We're not saying open your whole world, your whole financial world up to everybody, but find you a good coach. Do some research. Find a good financial person that you can relate to, and just be open to some outside guidance and some help. I think is important there.
I think that's one thing that really comes back to Scripture. It's like the wise man surrounds himself with really wise people. It's that idea. And I'm not wise on money at all. I'm like, my wife. I'm gonna lose part of my man points here, but my wife does all the finance and stuff. I just say, do we have enough money? Okay, and then can I buy this? Yeah or no? Okay. So,
well, that's probably most times, if we're totally honest. I mean, most of our guys out there are completely honest. That is most homes, and that was us. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'll just be real straight with what happened. In our situation, I was on staff at a very large church. I witnessed some things that made some people uncomfortable with me knowing about, so they fired me. And I'm just being real. That's what happened. And the finances weren't where they needed to be. And John, the only way that, for me personally, the only way that I started to really engage with it was when she just basically threw the checkbook and was like, "Here you go."
Yeah.
Figure it out. You believe?
Yeah, and see
that
that's not a good thing for me, because I'd be like, well, we're going in debt because I don't know how to do it. But one of the things that really is encouraging is to find somebody that does. And we talked about this before on the other podcast, of identifying those areas where you're weak and identify areas where you need help, and going, hey man, I need help with this. I don't know how to do it, and I don't. And so I think that's a wise thing to do.
Absolutely. I mean, as martial artists, we get it. I mean, it's, for me, so I did Shotokan karate for 8 years before I started doing jiu-jitsu, which has been about 7 years now. And, the reason that I've always been attracted to martial arts is because I know that there are certain weaknesses that I have. I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, and I wanted to focus on making those weaknesses stronger and, really excel with my strengths. And so it really does start with honesty. You need to be honest with yourself, where your weaknesses are, where your shortcomings are. And, John, that's a fine plan to, just leave it up to your wife. So when things don't work out, at least you can kind of point the finger at her, right?
And
exactly.
I told you, wonderful for your relationship.
I told you we're gonna burn.
Yeah. That's why Scott. Tomorrow we are interviewing a gentleman who is a Christian counselor, the head of the counseling department from Liberty.
Awesome.
So we can handle that stuff. It truly is. It's an area. I think guys, quite honestly, guys have an easier time saying I struggle with porn than they do saying I suck at finances.
Yeah.
And the reality is, guys, we want to help you. I mean, that's the whole reason that John and I do this and sit down and talk, and we don't have it all figured out. That's why we bring on pros like Scott. That's why we bring folks like him on. And I want to encourage you to, just like with anything, just start, just do something, even if it's small. If it is like as old school as putting a dish by the front door that you throw all your change in, and then take all that money at the end of the month to your bank, put in a little change thing, and then start investing it. I mean, like, even something small. And for our young guys, start now. Don't wait. Scott,
Absolutely.
I'll give it to you. I'm going to give it to you for the last word, John.
Yeah. So that just reminded me of when I was getting started with my wife, and I took some advice from my father-in-law, and I learned the whole idea of what a kitty was. He said, you need to keep money in the kitty. And of course, I had no idea what he was talking about, but he broke it down, and this really worked for Ashley and I in the beginning. And what we did is we created envelopes. We didn't make the envelopes, but we took the envelopes and we labeled them, and we put, okay, this is for groceries, this is for entertainment, this is for our mortgage. So and then what we did is we actually used cash, and very simple way to address finances, and you're watching it. That what's amazing is, and it is small things, but one small thing is once you realize how you're spending money, you'll start to see how you can save money as well. But you have to start, and you can start small, and you just need to really get involved in how you're spending money and be interested in that. And again, the only way you're really going to do that is if you find that trigger, that passion that you have that's going to keep you driving forward to keep those plans in place.
Well, it's ironic. A lot of us criticize our government for not having a budget and staying on budget, and we don't live on one ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
John?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, I think, it really is similar to how we had to start actually doing financial planning in that sense of budgeting, was that envelope system. And that's what saved our behinds many times, is going, well, there's no more cash in this, we can't do nothing about it. And so that's just one of the things that has helped us even get a small grip on our finance stuff. But man, thanks, Scott, for coming out and just talking with me, because that's something that, it's been helpful for me. I'm like thinking like, okay, I need to talk to Scott off the air.
Yeah.
Be having some conversation,
making notes.
Exactly, but yeah, man, I think it's really important for all of us guys out there to be serious, at least in some degree, about our finances and what we're going to be doing and how we're going to lead our family, how we're going to spend. Because I mean, even if you make decision to go, I'm not saving anything. I'm going to give everything I have away. Well, okay, well, how do we do that well? How do we do that in a way that's going to be glorifying to God, but also going to be let my family eat, kind of thing. And so I think that's just, it's a good place to start for us guys to. Did lagging?
It did. Back up and say that last thing again, buddy, if you will. We'll get that edited.
I don't remember what I said. What were we saying?
It's a great place to
I was
start.
saying it. Where'd y'all last thing y'all heard?
I don't know. I think it was.
You're talking about the envelope that works.
Man, y'all ain't listening to me. Y'all just like, man, let this idiot talk. Anyway, I was just saying.
You want to talk to me off air? That's all I know.
Yeah. So, no, what I'm saying is, it's a great place for us guys. Even if we decide we want to give every bit of our money away. If we say, you know what, God's called me to give everything that comes in, I'm giving out to somebody else. Even to do that, there's a way I think we can do that that glorifies God, that also will let us be able to feed our family and look at that. And so I think it's a way for as a husband, as a man, a leader of the house, a way of doing that and being serious about that and taking the lead and leading our families in that direction.
Absolutely.
So, guys, we've been challenged today, and I want to just encourage you. There's things that we didn't even address today that maybe Scott can come out and talk to us sometime about. I mean, for us who follow Christ, I mean, obviously tithing, things like that, being able to give right out of the gate, those are things that we definitely assume we need to do. But maybe Scott can come out and join us and talk on the reg and help us help each other to get a handle on this, because we know that life is hard enough without us doing things to make it harder for ourselves. And finances tend to be an area that couples, especially couples, disagree on. And you guys, maybe you're out there and you're single and you're like, well, I don't have a wife yet. Well, congratulations, my friend. Now is the time to start preparing. What a great catch you would be, right? Or like put that on your eHarmony profile. I have an IRA and 401k, and I'm saving money. But just start. Just do something. So thanks as always for joining us on the Guy Stuff podcast, and we will see you again soon.